Today, we're not doing full drawings because the snow is melted, so now the very little light that my state does get is all being absorbed into the ground instead of reflecting back into my face and activating the chemicals in my brain that prevent me from spiraling into a state of being that is not unlike the bag of lettuce that I forgot I had in my vegetable drawer in my refrigerator. So we got a little bit of a chill one, a little short, just taking it a little easy and doing some rough sketches just to get ourselves feeling sorted and back together again. And what better way to take it easy than to do a couple of redraws from my Redrawing My Childhood Characters series. The theme of this week's collection of cute characters is y'alternative, because I don't actually think I'll ever be able to not want to put vampy undertones in all of my drawings, and with my brain being the soggy heap of old lettuce that it is, I was not about to try and scratch that small shred of inspiration out, considering that sketching 6 different characters was asking a lot of myself as is. Continuing the theme from my last Redrawing Childhood Characters video, I totally misnamed my first file. This character is actually Autumn, not Audrey. She has some pretty major changes to her. I do keep the blue and aqua color scheme, and I do give her a hat, but I don't think anything else is at all like the original drawing. Also, speaking of hat, it was a very bold assumption on my part that I would be able to draw a cowboy hat in my current state. I think I draw 2 out of 6 total characters with identifiably cowboy hats, where in my original lineup I have 4 out of 6 characters wearing cowboy hats because I guess I was an ambitious child, but today we are just gonna get what we're gonna get. Looking at the original 6, I think we can gather one thing is that these characters may be listed as Wild West characters, but clearly they're just horse girls. And everybody asks, when you were young, were you a dragon girl, a horse girl, a wolf girl, or a dolphin girl? And the answer I have to that is that I was an insatiable goblin child who could not sit still for anything and could not have chosen a single category. But I will say, in terms of intensity, I do think horse girl was probably the strongest phase of my youth. I was thoroughly convinced that having scoured the pages of a book on different types of horses meant that I knew everything there was to know about horses, and that surely once I sat on the back of the right horse, she and I would have an unbreakable bond, and we would go on to win every single possible award for best horse, best girl. Needless to say, a combination of asthma and moderately severe allergies to dust, hay, and animal dander put a bit of a limiter on that dream. That being said, being a dragon girl has worked out surprisingly well as an alternative. But with that, we're going real quick through these. We come to the end of our first character, Autumn, who has undergone quite the transformation. I do think right out the gate, this is my favorite character design of the whole collection, and I feel like that definitely shows as I continue, unfortunately. But look, mushy lettuce brain is doing its best, so let's try not to be too hypercritical of my work going forward. So moving on to the next character, Riley. Again, taking some strong deviations from the original character design because I felt like there wasn't anything in particular about her original palette and features that struck me as distinct from the rest of the characters. I kept her sort of frizzy hair, the pink theme, also the hat, which you see me struggle with for a good long while. Really, I should have just titled this video Lady Split Chin Struggles to Draw Hats and Pistols for 11 minutes of speed draw, but I brought this upon myself for drawing a bunch of Wild West themed vampire hunters. The reason I'm moving away so strongly from just drawing a bunch of teenagers as they were is because there are actually still a good number of characters that will eventually need to be redrawn that are genuinely just a bunch of teenagers. Not vampires, not Wild West, not historical themed, literally just a bunch of normal people. Looking at my current portfolio of art, that is not really where I find my comfort zone. So I was thinking that whenever I do get around to drawing those particular characters, I'm going to set up some of those like spinner wheels, one with a list of character names and one with a bunch of different aesthetics: cottagecore, decora, scene, dark academia, etc. I have at least 11 characters to apply to this category of not having a defined aesthetic, and I have 0 brain cells. So if you have any recommendation for cool styles that you'd like to see me try and draw, I would be eternally grateful for any suggestions. Speaking of the number of characters I have to draw, in my last redraw video, I said I have 69 childhood characters to redraw, and that is not even close to the truth. I went back and made an Excel document to help me keep track of the characters I plan to redraw, and it's That's 98 total, 17 of which I have completed so far, and 23 as soon as I rendered these alternative girlies. So yeah, lady split chin lies on the internet confirmed. Sorry. I would get right to work on that dramatic apology video, but I don't have a ukulele. I want to take a moment to point out Riley's happy, almost smug face. I really like it, and that makes me a little scared to render her. There's a looseness of my sketches that creates a lot more movement and character, and I think my rendering style unintentionally adds this kind of weight to that, and especially to expressions. So fingers crossed that whenever I render her, I actually manage to keep her little bright-eyed expression, because it's hands down one of my favorite things about this whole collection of characters. In my head, she's like the Pinkie Pie of the group. Yes, I have been watching too many of those infection alternate universe TikToks, but on the other hand, the version of My Little Pony that your girl grew up with are considered vintage and collectible, and that kind of makes me feel old, so I'm not going to elaborate on that at all. On to the next character, we have Shaana, who I think stays the most true to her original character vibes and design of all of the characters in this Cowgirl Redraw series. I say vibes instead of personality or backstory because there was a middle stage in this world building development where I was just making characters for the sake of filling up a new environment that I wanted to design, which is not super different from what I like to do in my own campaign and world building nowadays. Unfortunately, this means that the Wild West section of the world never really got developed, but the map did have a train, which was something unique to this particular section of the map, and Shaana worked on the train. I cannot say confidently that she was the conductor. She is giving very flight attendant energy in her original design, but in my defense, my biggest reference for what people working on a train look like was from Polar Express, so there's that. Anyways, Western movie stereotype often has that one hardworking lady with the bustles and the feathers in her hair, and she packs a lot of punch and has a knife on her thigh, and Shaana is my excuse to lean into that design cliche. Shaana may wear the highest heels of the group, but she has just as much firepower as the rest of them. And you can tell she's strong because I draw a big Rudy Tooty point and shooty of a non-specific kind because I know very little about drawing firearms and even less about using one. As far as design goes, I'm pretty on the fence about whether or not I like this one. I think I could have added more layers to her skirt, and while I was keeping her to her original color palette quite well, I feel like there's just not a lot of contrast in the color picks. You can see me in the speed drop flop a little bit between colors. I think whenever I go back and finish her render, I'm going to try and up the contrast, maybe add a few more layers, maybe add a few more details. Shaana is my character with heavily draped fabric in this lineup, and you know I am here for a good fabric drape, so I really want to do this design just a better justice whenever my brain cells are less mushy. And in part of that redesign, note to self, change the ammo in the bandolier to silver bullets because we're hunting vampires out here and the brass and copper is not going to cut it. And then on to the next character we have, and oops, I forgot to hit record because I'm so professional, which is such a shame because I was so proud of how well this character came together after struggling so hard with the shapes on a couple of the last ones. There were so many good shapes in the framework for this design, and I am so bummed that I didn't record the process, but it is what it is. This is Audrey, and I kind of want to come up with like an alternative unique nickname for each of the characters. Like, for example, Riley has a lot of spider theming in her outfit, so she would be Spider or Arachne, and that's about as far down the list of girls and code names that I got, but it was a cute thought that I might develop whenever I render this lineup. Audrey has the hat with the floppy brim that I have been trying to achieve since I started this journey of drawing cute cowgirls, and I'm still not quite pleased with how it sits on her head. But look, we are accepting the small wins today, and the fact that it made it through the sketch phase to the coloring phase, that is good enough for me. And you know what else is good enough for me? Her jacket. Actually, it's probably one of my favorite pieces of clothing in this entire series. Personally, I think nothing beats Autumn's full ensemble, but in terms of single articles of clothing, Audrey's jacket with the accent lines and the fringe and the way it lays on her arms is just so satisfying to me. I wanted to give her a pair of matching chaps, but my brain buffered while working on her pants, so we have matching boots and a jacket instead, which is just as cute. Although I am going to move that colonial looking shoe buckle as soon as possible incredible because girl, what? Something a little unfortunate about these designs is that since I'm not finishing the full renders in this video, you don't get to see the final patterns or designs or the sparkles. On Audrey here, I put a little bat on her belt buckle, but this is just a reminder of the designs that I want to incorporate into her character later down the line. But I unfortunately don't add this kind of detail at this stage. But we're already on the next character, so here we come to a big buff dual-wielding strong girl, Dalia. Dalia, much like Shaana, sticks pretty close to her original design, but I do ditch the plaid and the lime green color combination for a completely different color palette. You know, you hate to see the blinding colors go, but it is a sacrifice I'm willing to make. But seriously, looking at the clothing choices that I made for the original character designs is incredibly indicative of the era. We've got a lacy bolero cover-up over an aqua blue tank top. We've got flare bottom yoga pants jeans with rainbow polka dots on black for the rain boots. We've got deep side parts, fluffy bangs, low-rise jeans, t-shirts with tank tops under them, and just this is a straight up historical account of the fashion in the era on its own accord. I do remember with Dalia's design specifically, I was obsessed with girls who were pale, with freckles, with big curly red hair and green eyes. Meanwhile, I was a very tan little child with brown hair and brown eyes and very, very crooked front teeth, and I was so devastated learning that my mom's brown eye dominant genetic traits absolutely decimated any chance of me inheriting my dad's gray-green eye color. If the movie Brave had come out during this point in my life, it would have probably fundamentally changed the way my brain developed, possibly changing the entire course of my life. Needless to say, no matter how much my vitamin D absorption has decreased over the years, or rather how pale I get due to not going outside for anything ever, I am still not Scottish. However, I do find remnants of me still picking character designs with hints of that love for red hair in characters such as Thrud from God of War Ragnarok, and the incredibly problematic but undeniable favorite, Lenore from the Castlevania Netflix series, my love, my everything. But on to the last character for this series, Cassidy. So this is probably not my favorite design of the group, but I will say it's most likely because I really rushed this design. Each of these characters ranged from taking an hour of work to 20 minutes of work. Autumn obviously took the longest, and Cassidy obviously took the shortest because I really needed to go to bed, but I couldn't stop at 5. I had to draw all 6 of the girls. So Cassidy is maybe I'll fix it in post character, but unlike the draw fee we know and love, in post doesn't appear at the end of this video. I will post it to my various social medias whenever I do the full render, so I'm not going to be intentionally withholding the drawings from y'all or anything like that. Cassidy was supposed to be the short, spunky mob boss, I guess, of the group. I was going to dress her blonde and pink like she is in her original image, but I got the biggest cowgirl Barbie vibes, which looking back on it, it's not a bad thing at all. I think just in my mushy lettuce brain, I was like, oh no, I'm a fraud and I don't have any original designs. So I went red instead. Looking at her after the fact, the red really darkens up the entire look and decreases the contrast in a way that I'm not a huge fan of. And I think I'm gonna go back to the pink direction. Maybe add a bunch of rhinestones to her corset situation. Reject imposter syndrome, embrace the Barbie. Although, disclaimer, I haven't even seen the Barbie movie, despite really wanting to, but lately the only time I let myself watch movies unhindered is on plane rides, and despite what last October might have made you think, I'm not on planes particularly often. But here we are at the end of the video. I love girls, I love girl groups, I love this lineup, and I'm really looking forward to having more energy to put into finishing these designs when I manage to remember where I left my brain cells. And I appreciate you all still putting up with me and following me on my various social medias, despite me not posting anywhere in particular very consistently. But also thank you all so much for getting me to nearly 850 subscribers as of recording this. It's wild. So many of the new subscribers have been commenting just the sweetest things, following me on all my social medias. You guys are all so awesome. I'm downright thrilled to be collecting a bunch of cozy chaos art nerds. Thank you so much for your support. It truly means the world to me. But with that, I will see you guys next week. Ideally, having located wherever I dropped the 2 brain cells that I really cannot afford to be misplacing like this, but who knows? Not me.